thanks for joining us as we take our remotely interesting video series on the road. This week we're lucky to have been given access to some exclusive research from our friends at Vanson Bourne. For those that don't know, Vanson Bourne are a specialist market research consultancy that work a lot in the technology space. So today I'm joined by John Mackay, Associate Director of Vanson Bourne. Hi John.
Hi, great to be with you.
Thanks for joining us. So your recent study that you've given us access to explores how news consumption has changed for UK and US-based IT decision makers during the last 6 months, so during the pandemic. In summary, some of the stats that you shared with us shows that 51% of technology decision makers use social media to get their news fix at the moment. 58% said that they're watching more live news and on-demand video. 56% are attending more organised webinars and events, and then 37% are consuming more market research. So given that, and particularly on the market research topic, how would you say that the role of market research has kind of changed during the current climate, and what should technology companies that are thinking about actually commissioning a piece of their own research do to use it to their advantage?
Absolutely. I mean, I think first of all, I'd say that it's becoming more important. You might think he would say that because I work for a research company, but I think, well, I guess to start with some context. I mean, you went into some of those really interesting findings that we discovered in August. This trend that digital content consumption is up since the start of the year across a range of mediums and channels. I think that's very much driven by, we're all working remotely. We're all feeling, maybe more so at the start, isolated and in need of, to expand our methods of keeping in touch, collaborating, staying up to speed with developments. And we saw in the survey findings that many say they're consuming more from video to webinars, ebooks, infographics, blogs, surveys. We like that last one. And
yeah, that's a good positive outcome for you guys from all of this.
Absolutely, we did like that one, yeah. And it kind of backing that. It was really interesting to see what's driving that increase. And there were sort of four things that stood out. So, getting information from a trusted source is vital for our respondents. Content that is easy to digest and share. Content that is regularly updated, that is on demand. We saw that with the increase in consumption of video in particular was a big thing. And content based on research findings, having that kind of solid foundation of insight. I think as you said at the start, Hannah, it was the same with channels, social media. We saw an increase as well. And so really this ever-growing demand for content, I feel conducting research can offer huge value and remains, a clear way to generate original insights and content and explore new areas, particularly given we're all in a very new situation. We're all facing new challenges and opportunities as companies and individuals. I guess, a few final thoughts on that. I suppose finding a unique angle is always quite tough. A lot of clients always come to us and say they want something unique, as I'm sure you get as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And that, it often isn't maybe possible to ask a unique question, but it's what you then do with those insights, how you tailor them, how you cut them up, whether you look at industries, regions, and then how you deliver that to your audience as well. I think that's what can really help stand out. And above all, I think when we've been looking at this research, key is to try and not stoke further fear and doubt unnecessarily. We're all bombarded with enough of that in the news, arguably. So obviously without coming across as naive or dismissive of issues, but using robust research findings as a base, allows you to be constructive, to be inquisitive, to be authoritative. But just avoid the sort of unnecessary negativity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, because there's a tendency to think, well, if we do some research, then what we want is that real attention-grabbing headline. 50% of your workforce don't understand cybersecurity or something like that. It's a real sort of, and it fears that fear and panic about needing to invest more in a particular area. But to your point, it's about being constructive and actually saying, we found these data points, this is what we've noticed through doing that piece of research, and here's what you can do to address some of those challenges, or something like you said that's not naive but constructive and actually educational. I think in the in style. So on that point then, with the research consumption on the art, people are always looking for a unique angle. What can they do to sort of reinvent the wheel? Research surveys and things are nothing new. What would you say your sort of top tip would be in terms of running a successful market research campaign for technology companies that might be thinking about doing it? And maybe if there's anything that's changed sort of through the pandemic on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And perhaps whittling it down to a single tip is difficult.
Yeah, I know, it's quite tough. What's your top? Yeah, your top couple.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, and in many ways, it's perhaps nothing new, but it's sort of ever more important. Obviously, having a plan in place is more important than ever, but increasingly so having flexibility in that plan to be able to react and adapt, particularly in terms of timings and deliverables. Maybe at the start of a 12-week research project, you were planning for a 20-page white paper, that really goes in depth on certain things. When you get to the point of delivery, though, perhaps things have changed, and maybe a more agile deliverable, a series of infographics, a video, for instance, might sort of work better or fit the moment. So I think keeping in mind, obviously the need to plan and set deadlines, but also to give yourself options. I think linked to that as well is a family of content, I guess, as we describe it. So don't be over reliant on a single hero asset or single deliverable, which might not meet that moment when the moment comes. Give yourself options. As we've seen in the research, as I mentioned, live dynamic video content, webinars, all these kind of things are growing in popularity. I suppose other thoughts. I mean, it's always vital to kind of know who you're going to interview and what countries and what numbers you want to interview, but don't forget about the end audience as well. Who's going to be reading the research at the end of the day, who's going to be consuming those insights and responding to your call to action. Keep in mind throughout, what are we trying to solve or help, and how is that changing?
What's the point, almost? Because I think that's often where we see that people can, we want to do a piece of research, and the answer is, well, why? Is it for broad education? Perhaps it's to generate brand awareness or press interest or something, or is it for selling more product? And actually, those two things are both absolutely acceptable objectives, but mixing the two up together, perhaps doesn't work. And I think that's often what we see, is that it becomes, pieces of research can become very product oriented, and do you have this particular product, or do you buy this service, which is not then going to generate any kind of headline that a journalist would be interested in. So it's sort of like you said, marking your goal. What are you really trying to achieve from the beginning, that you'll end up with a better result.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's, as you've sort of mentioned there already, it's we kind of always work to sort of four principles. What is the overall intent, as you say? Is it thought leadership? Is it is it promoting a product? What's the call to action? What's the hook for the audience? What are the maybe individual objectives of each piece? Are you doing an infographic, and what do you want them to do off the back of that? And then obviously, as I've said, keep in mind the needs of the reader. What are they going to respond to as well?
I think that's really valuable advice. I think it's just it's taking that slightly more methodical approach, and kind of thinking it through and trying to scope all of that out before just charging off and rushing through and kind of commissioning something. So I mean, I think we could probably talk about this all day, but I am conscious about but that's really helpful, and I think really brilliant advice. And from our perspective, it's always great to kind of have partners like Vanson Bourne involved in these kind of conversations and giving advice to directly to the technology companies that we're working with on how to make a success of this stuff. So thank you for letting us pick your brains, and yeah, we'll and absolutely check out. We're going to share this all via our social, but also so I know Vanson Bourne have got much more detailed sort of data and infographics on the research as well on their site too. So check them out, and thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, John, and we'll see you soon.